それではパラレル
Ladies and gentlemen, we would now like to start a parallel session on future directions for IFSD post Rio +20. This session is going to be moderated by Mr. Kazuhiko Takemoto, Senior Fellow, United Nations University Institute of Advanced Studies. Thank you. We are close to the end of ISAP2012. Based on the discussion that we had during the keynote, the session of the pre-note session, just before the session, I would like to have a discussion with the panelists and the participants. Future directions for IFSD, post Rio +20 IFSD, Institutional Framework for Sustainable Development after Rio +20, and its future directions is the topic that we would like to discuss during this session. I will do away with my introductory remarks. Instead, based on the discussion during the previous keynote session, we are hoping that we could deepen our discussion. In particular, we would like to bring in the regional aspect. We would like to talk about the future direction in the Asia-Pacific region in particular to conclude ISAP2012 event. We have experts as our panelists and discussants. We have a total of 6, and they have diverse backgrounds. So first, why don't we hear from our speakers? And first speaker is Dr. Tomoko Nishimoto, Director, Division of Regional Cooperation, UNEP.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Takemoto. Again, it's a very good flow from the last session. I was in Rio also, and this was my first time. This is my 3rd year in UNEP. Being in the United Nations in the last over 20 years, but I was always on the ground in the country level work. And this kind of global discussion was something that we are hearing about, and it was very interesting to see for the first time in the negotiation. And a very experienced negotiator told me that, Tomoko, when nobody's happy on the text, that is a good document. So as you have heard, that a lot of people are very unhappy, and the negotiator said, we got the balance right. So that was a kind of atmosphere. However, I think after the months, weeks gone, and everybody started reading, and as we have heard from the last session, affirm, recognize, reinforce, and everybody could see that there were many, many opportunities that they can build on. Some institutions, I think even decided that, UN agencies did counting on how many paragraphs we are in, and therefore we can build on that, that kind of very much of optimism sets in. And as we have heard, side events, Professor Hirono mentioned that the impact of such a knowledge and experience sharing will really come into effect. The impact will come into effect in the coming weeks and months when we discuss those opportunities which have been opened up by the outcome document. Now, on the IFSD, the outcome document agreed to, as we have heard, to strengthen the architecture to support international actions for sustainable development. And as we have heard, that includes a high-level political forum on sustainable development and strengthening and upgrading UNEP. In terms of the negotiation we have discussed, what was dropped and what was in the outcome. This upgrade was also a very hotly debated word as far as UNEP is concerned. And as an institution, we were very optimistic because now there's both strengthening and upgrading of UNEP specifically mentioned in the in the outcome document. We have also heard that the SDGs, this was described by the Brazilian government or Brazilian negotiators, the crown jewels. But they haven't picked up the gems, whether it's going to be a ruby red, blue, green, emerald, or what kind of colors we will have on the Sustainable Development Goals have not been discussed. It's left for an open working group of 30 nations to decide upon by September 2013. And 2 years later that, the SDGs will be blended into with the Millennium Development Goals. I think it's very, very important that environmental dimension will be reinforced when we discuss the SDGs, along with the gender dimension, as Surendra mentioned in the previous the previous session. The gender dimension was hotly debated. A lot of brackets were there during the negotiation time, and the impressive lobbying was done by the women's organizations during the negotiations. Quite a good description has remained and reinforced the importance of the women's empowerment and gender equality. Now, in our view, the environmental pillar paragraphs of the future we want represent important steps forward in reforming the environmental governance. From the start, UNEP has been engaged in the discussion on the institutional framework for sustainable development through a very comprehensive work on international environmental governance. The process of strengthening the IEG IEG meaning International Environment Governance, began with UNEP-led intergovernmental consultations that started from Rome and went to Belgrade, Nairobi, Helsinki, before being merged into the Rio +20 process in New York. So it has been a long process. Interesting dynamic discourse happened along the way. And throughout that journey of IEG discussion, Asia-Pacific region was very actively involved. The paragraphs in the outcome document concerning the UNEP mandate, as enshrined in the Stockholm, Nairobi, Malmo declarations. As you know, we had the IEG conferences in those areas. Every time there were declarations and reinforced bits by bits what should be the element that we should concretize and then reaffirm or adopted by the Rio Declaration. And main paragraph, as we have seen in the last session, is the paragraph 88. Member states called for strengthening UNEP as a leading global environmental authority by establishing a universal membership in UNEP Governing Council. This is a very important element, universal membership, which is not in place at the moment. And it also calls for other measures to strengthen UNEP's governance as well as its responsiveness and accountability to member states, mandating it to provide capacity building to countries as well as support and facilitate access technology. You also heard that this technology issue, capacity building issue, was a very often a very sensitive topic to debate and discuss. But in terms of the mandate for the UNEP, it was crystal clear in the end. The outcome document also called for active participation of all relevant stakeholders and asked the UNEP to draw the best practices of other multilateral institutions and mandate UNEP to explore new ways of 21st ways of engaging the mandate, and we are very happy to have that challenge in the coming years.